All right. So, explain to the chat who you guys are, Tal and LA, if you don't mind me, because they wanna know what's going on.
Yeah, you want to start?
Sure. I'm Ella. I'm 17. She, her. I'm currently in Tel Aviv. I'm a Mesarvot activist and an activist in several other spaces as well. Um, that's it.
Yeah, I'm tall. I'm 18. I just finished high school. Um, I'm currently in the process of refusing service. Um, and I'm also an activist in the Mesarvot network.
So I was thinking that perhaps because a lot of the people in chat and those watching won't necessarily know a whole lot about how, like the mechanics of mandatory enlistment in the Israeli military. So, I was wondering if you could each talk a little bit about, what is the requirement and what happens when you refuse it and why it's so exceptional for people to refuse it.
Every non-Arab teen gets the draft order in Israel. That means if you're Jewish or like someone who came to Israel at a young age, you get the draft order. And it's very entrenched in society, the idea of military service. Most conversations will start with like the question of where did you serve, and then the answer, no, I didn't serve, is very what's it called? It
Out of the ordinary.
out of the ordinary, right?
Right. Yeah. It's like you're talking about dozens of people every year, perhaps, who do this in, a country of several million.
Right. So actually, the idea that everyone serves in the military isn't necessarily true. Actually, 50% of the people who get draft orders either do not finish their service or don't serve at all. This includes the Haredi population, the ultra-Orthodox. That get exemptions on religious basis. People who get exemptions on mental health, and all other kinds of exemptions.
But
Yeah.
only if you actively refuse and serve time in a military prison.
Yes. Only few. Yeah, only few get jailed.
Yeah. I remember this is kind of sounds silly, but I remember there was a Taylor Swift Stan account that went viral on Twitter a couple years prior, that came out of nowhere and was like, "Oh, sorry for being offline. I was in jail," and people asked like what was going on, and I remember them saying that they refused to serve for the Israeli military, and that's why they were placed in prison for an indefinite amount of time. I'm not entirely sure what happened to them, but Turkey has mandatory military service as well. We have pardons. I myself did not serve in the Turkish military, despite being Turkish, because
You
I was.
contribute to the Turkish mission in other ways.
Yes, yes, exactly. By dismantling the American imperialist state from within, one Twitch stream at a time. However, there are obviously pardons, is what they call it. Off is what the word is, that you can pay to not serve, especially if you are especially if you went to college. Then there's like limitations, like your terms of service get lower. I don't know if Israel has a similar process there as well. And then beyond that, if you have dual citizenship or if you have worked in a foreign nation, specifically for me, it was America, for a couple years at that point, all you need to do is like pay a fine, and then you can go back to Turkey if you want to without a prison sentence. However, people do definitely go to prison in Turkey for not serving in the military, for sure.
And
Definitely
in
common.
Israel also, I know many people, I have friends and even family members who did not serve because they had, medical exemptions, and it was just it wasn't a particularly difficult process. There's money and there's appeals, but what does throw a wrench into it, and what is exceptional, is to refuse on the basis of conscientious objection, on the basis of opposition to military policy. So I guess how did for both of you, Tal and Ella, what was the basis of your objection? How did you come to want to refuse this thing on a basis that marks you, and if it puts you, in a different category from the rest of Israel by and large?
Sorry.
So from a very young age, like there is like talks around like military service, like it's a very prominent part of the culture. And for me, from that very young age, when it was mentioned and talked about, like I knew and imagined that I don't really want to hold a weapon and harm people. I was a very gentle child. Uh, but I was continuously told by family members and friends that I can contribute in other ways, that I can serve in a desk position or do some kind of media work and so on, or intel. And only in the past few years, it became increasingly clear for me that I just can't let myself in any condition serve this system. Um,
Yeah. So for me, it was a little bit of I came to my conclusion a little bit later than Ella. But I did grow up in a house where both my parents did not serve. They immigrated to here from the U.S. And the politics was talked about in a lot in the house. And from a young age, I did know that there was this conflict, and that both sides were kind of these bad guys. But only at a later age, I realized that there is a cycle of violence here, but there is an occupier and an occupyee. Um, uh, is that how you say it?
Occupied.
Occupyee? Occupier.
Occupied, but
Yeah.
I like occupyee. I think that is I'm gonna be using that more and more.
Right. So, through school and through like other through other programs, I learned math and computer science, and we were told that if you learn this, then you will probably get into a high ranking intelligence unit, and then right after the intelligence unit, you will go out into a high paying job. Um, and I saw that as a pretty good option, an option of not holding a gun, an option of not killing people. But then, after reading a little bit and seeing what the intelligence units actually do, I realized that every every one of these positions, if it's a intelligence unit or someone that just brings coffee to a general, every one of these positions aids and is part of the apartheid regime and the occupation.
And when one thing I was especially curious about also in that process is, I'm sure you guys were not alone in how you thought or talked about these issues. What was it like to discuss these kinds of things with your friends? Are you doing this alone and, among your circle of friends at school, or was this, did you meet people more and more online, and that was like, I truly feel, like my age shows here a little bit, but when I was younger, I knew a lot of this was like it was networked, but in just a totally different way.
I think it's difficult with the general population of people our age. Like I think me and many other like radical leftists, both in our age group and just generally in Israeli society, feel very estranged. Like it's a very nationalistic and militaristic culture, and we oppose these ideas. Uh, but also, I think like both in Messervort specifically and the anti-occupation activist space more broadly, like it's very tied to like social relationships. Like me and Tal are very good friends, and we met through anti-occupation activism, and the Messervort network. Like the way it works is very like based on relations between people and friendships and socializing. So I think while the radicalism of refusal does estrange you from many parts of Israeli society, it also like introduces new parts.
Yeah, I feel like in my high school friend group or friends. A lot of people, I mean, most or all of my friends are either currently in military service or awaiting the draft. And it can be tough. I mean, it kind of, some friendships get broken. But the way that I explain myself, I'm very blessed that I had friends, or that I have friends that can understand that it comes from a very like humanistic and like from a very kind of peace wanting approach.
And I guess, in the October 7th in the West and how it's been perceived in Israel versus how it's perceived elsewhere, and versus, it's a very, it was an event that I think for many people, like in Israel, it led them to feel like they could never again have any relationship with the left that would claim that that kind of violence could be, represent anything productive or legitimate. And then there are others I know who obviously don't feel that way, etc. But from your guys' vantage point, I'm sort of curious about how that event and the subsequent Israeli and ongoing Israeli reprisal, has sort of shaped your perception of, what refusing means, and whether or not it'll be tougher, easier, or any thoughts you may have on it, since like, as it's changed in the last 2 months.
Yeah, so during the past year and a half, we've been protesting in the anti-occupation bloc against the judicial reform that the Netanyahu government is trying to pass. And we were saying, we've always been saying that occupation and that oppression brings resistance. Now, it does not mean that this resistance, that the terrorist attack on October 7th is legitimate in any way. Targeting civilians is horrific, and we were all hurt by the events of October 7th. But the things that we were saying, that oppression brings resistance, stand true, and my values at least have not changed and actually gotten stronger. I believe it with a full heart. What was I saying? Yeah, so after the October 7th events, terrorist attacks, a lot of people that were on the radical left kind of changed up and said, no, we can't talk with Palestinians anymore. The only solution is a military and a violent one.
In like colloquially, it's called the sobering up. Right.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That's an apt, because that's how it's presented.
So, can we talk a little bit about like how culturally, especially at an early age, military service is propped up in Israel to obviously beef up hyper nationalistic sentiment, because there is Hedi Viterbo is a senior lecturer, associate professor in law at Queen Mary University of London, who has compiled some information about like how in Israel from an early age the indoctrination is set on hyping up military service, I guess. One of the aspects of that is that public schools in Israel are legally required to teach students about the importance of military service. Israeli law also prohibits schools from hosting talks by organizations that criticize the military. Is this something that you experienced when you were at school? Because there's other things that I've seen as well, like in 11th grade. Non-Orthodox Jewish students in Israel attend a week-long paramilitary camp known as the Gadna. Is this a super popular thing, or is this just like an edge case? That's something I wanted to ask you guys about.
The Gadna is an event that a lot of high school students participate in. I went to a high school where the principal was very very liberal, but not like radical. So he canceled the Gadna, or I don't know if it ever happened in Tel Aviv. But yeah, there is a lot of indoctrination. I remember in first grade, there was an activity to write soldiers letters that are currently in service, which sounds like insane to someone out of
Oh, we did
this
that in
bubble.
America too. Well, not me. I wasn't in America at the time, but that's American practice as well.
I don't think the US is an example to a non-nationalistic,
Yeah.
non-militaristic.
Of course.
And I will say this also, just as an aside, I did Gadna twice through different like youth, program, like summer things when I was a teenager. So it's also like it's an indoctrination that's not just inwardly directed in Israel, but also very much at Jewish youth in America as well.
Yeah, but like absolutely, like it's like military service, and the military is like present in most every facet of like Israeli culture and Israeli like the experience of growing up like from a very young age. Like many times like soldiers are brought to schools to talk with students, and through like many of the like first parts of the enlistment process are the students are taken to as a class together through the school. Even like many youth programs, like even the things that are not like the scouts that are already militaristic, like are very oriented towards military service. Even the queer youth organization in Israel, like they have like meetings with the gender specialist of the IDF to
Like
calm
like IDF gender officers.
uh, worries around the enlistment. Like it's present everywhere.
Yeah. And
There's all.
what?
Go ahead. No.
Oh no, one question just to that point also, as far as like the, uh like like programming in schools and stuff like that, is it something that like as high school went on, I mean, like how did the process of like enlistment and stuff get integrated into your education? To the extent that like, you're talking about like, oh, math and science prepares you for like a job in a really sexy unit, or like, oh, you're not like, or somebody who may not necessarily be a university student in the future, they'll be like, okay, start preparing for a life in the military, and then, they'll sort things out into the future.
So, like in the U.S., in high school there's a very big focus on getting into college, and learning stuff in high school that will help us in college. In Israel, it's exactly the same with the military. Um, it's seen as a kind of bouncing pad into civilian life. It gets talked about also as a melting pot between the periphery and the city
And the different ethnic groups
and the
and
different ethnic
cultures.
groups. But in reality, the army is far from that. Mostly high class, mostly rich people go to the intelligence units and get bounced to a better job. And the people that get sent to the front lines to die are mostly periphery people, mostly Middle Eastern Jews, and they get sent in the name of the country, in the name of the homeland.
Yeah, like in schools, the IDF is very commonly presented as like a tool of class mobility, while in practice it only strengthens class divisions.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's a really, I think, good point, and you're right to mention it, because Israel, an American, like it's Israel, the Israeli army is presented as like a sort of equalizing institution within Israeli life, and that Americans especially are presented with that it's even kind of a vestige of Israeli socialism, when in reality, as you guys just explained, it reifies, it makes real and lasting a lot of the class divisions that exist within Israeli society. You, Hassan?
Well, there was another thing. The Tel Aviv municipality presenting a military camp. This is from Yediot. A camp that is for children as young as the age of 3. But beyond that, one thing I wanted to ask you guys is like what the Israeli left looks like now. Noah brought on Dr. Ofer Kasif early on. I think it was like immediately after October 7th, as a matter of fact, right after he got expelled from the Knesset. And beyond
Suspended,
him
to
and
be
a couple,
clear. Suspended, not expelled.
not expelled, suspended. Sorry. And beyond his party, and beyond a few of the Israeli leftists that are in my chat, at least, that we joke around about, like how there's 10 leftists in Israel and they're all in the community. Like,
They all know.
what does the Israeli left look like? Because one aspect of this, when I compare Israel to, the apartheid formation of South Africa, by the end of the apartheid in South Africa, due to international pressure from the Western world and Western partners, the majority of the white population, also slim majority, but the majority of the white population also saw the apartheid as something that was unsustainable, and that it was actually creating too much outside pressure upon upon South African commerce, as a matter of fact. And I feel as though there obviously needs to be internal pressure within Israel, and yet it seems like the Israeli left is marginal at best, or non-existent at worst.
First of all, I would like to say that that is a miscalculation. The radical left is at least 300 people.
Okay.
But we don't know each other. I think it's also different because I think right now I spoke with an anti-apartheid activist from South Africa, who was from the South African version of Messelvot a few weeks ago. He interviewed me, and he told me when we did it, it was almost child's play compared to your situation, because our movement was already during the last parts of the apartheid regime, when most of the population already agreed with our sentiments. And I think while we are not at that in that same situation, there is space for that to grow. Ultimately, it is the Israeli populace's best interest to stop the occupation, because we recognize that terror attacks aren't great for us, and that the apartheid regime isn't great for us, and that the continuation of this not really a solution of the Palestinian Authority isn't great for us. So we have to find a practical solution. And even if you hate all Palestinians, which you shouldn't, but even if you do, expelling or killing or genociding millions of people just isn't a very practical solution. So we're gonna have to find a way for all of us to stay here and live together. And I think that sentiment is what can take off, and does take off, and did take off, at least before the 7th of October, within the Israeli population.
Yes. For decades, the sentiment here was, a lot of the population was, the idea was to maintain the conflict, and manage the conflict, as in not do anything and hope things get better. And now after the October 7th attack, this conception has totally been shattered. And we offer a place where everyone will be able to live together in peace and security. But what's scary is the right wing that is offering another solution to the broken conception of managing the conflict, which is a transfer or genocide of all Palestinians.
And to the point of transfer and genocide, I think one of the big questions that exists in the discourse, particularly in America, about that is that, well, sure, Israel's killing many civilians to target Hamas, but it's not genocide because Israeli society is not arranged, it's a democratic society, et cetera, and so forth. And I kind of want I don't think that people have to be cartoon villains to permit or even themselves carry out really atrocious acts of violence. That goes for anybody at any point in history, although obviously everybody, certainly my reference point for all that kind of stuff and that morality is the Holocaust. And so I'm curious from your guys' perspective about how how this kind of violence can be normalized, or how it is normalized within Israeli society beyond just enlistment, but sort of, when we talk about like a militaristic culture and so forth, that the other part of that, or that another side of dimension of that requires dehumanizing Palestinians and these people, with whom, as you said, Ella, it's in the Israeli populace's best interest to live with peacefully.
I don't think you can really call like it's a democratic culture. Like, like there are millions of people in both, like in East Jerusalem and the West Bank and
The Golan Heights.
in Gaza and the Golan Heights, who are like directly affected by the policy decisions of the Israeli government and don't have any effect on it. And don't even have democracy within their own like areas. Like the West Bank hasn't had an election in way too long, and that's largely because of the Israeli government's policy. So I don't really think it can be called a democracy, and also I don't really see how a democratic culture can't enact a genocide. I think like practically what's happening is the violent transfer of millions of people, and I think, I don't know what we call it, is like, call it what it is.
Also,
Um,
like, are they not cartoon villains? I mean, they're saying there are no civilians there.
No,
Right.
yeah, no, it's, to me though, it is though, like, you can look at like a Ben Gvir or Smotrich or any of these like crazy nationalists who are hopped up, and it's like, that's very scary. But like, I also think that they're, it's like, Ariel Sharon didn't act that way, although he acted pretty close, and he was the guy who oversaw Sabra and Shatila and all that. Uh, but one thing I was, before I just kicked it back over to Hassan, before I forgot, I did want to sort of bring up the question of, you guys mentioned earlier that you were in the anti-occupation bloc within the broader protests against judicial reform that were taking place earlier this year after the election of the current right-wing fascistic government. And I'm kind of curious now, with like having, like some time has passed since October 7th and also those protests, how you experienced them. What was your, how you encountered them trying to raise the issue of occupation, and just sort of, I guess, how you feel like what those protests' relationship to the present is now that everything seems so different in Israel.
Wait, I just want to go back to one point before, just a short thing,
Oh yeah,
about the banality of evil.
yeah,
Um, yeah, so that's what, banality?
yeah, banality.
banality, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a thing that exists in the US, in Israel, in Germany. So, yeah. The anti-occupation bloc. Yeah.
Sure. I think like I first want to recognize, like, with how many problems I did have with the broader anti-judicial overhaul protests. Like, it was the largest like anti-establishment protest in the country ever. I think that's like impressive on its own. I very much appreciate the, like, historically the protests for what they were. And I also think like it wasn't just that, like, for example, like for a few weeks, right next to where the anti-occupation bloc was in the Tel Aviv protests, there was an anti-vaxxer
Bloc.
block. It was like three people. Them, like, even if their point did stand, which it doesn't, like, they just take this struggle and then say, oh, but what about vaccines? And I think with the anti-occupation bloc, what many from the general protests eventually did realize is that it's not just that we say, yes, dictatorship is bad, but what about the apartheid? What about the occupation? It's like really, really interlinked. Like, it's not just by case that the people bringing forward the judicial overhaul are all settlers from the West Bank. It's not just by case that all the laws that they are trying to enact will allow them to annex more and more of the sea territories in the West Bank. It's not just that they further the apartheid laws within the Israel between Arab Israelis and Jewish Israelis. It's like the goal of the judicial overhaul, with how much it does harm Israeli women and Israeli queer people and so on. The goal of it is to further the occupation.
Yeah, it seems. I mean, it's what reactionary ideologues do globally. Some use the occupation and the national security concerns to make their religious objectives to turn Israel into a full-blown Jewish supremacist religious ethno state, which it already is well on its way to becoming, despite the fact that the majority of the population being secular themselves. Or some people who are secular themselves can't necessarily object to the far right heel turn, or maybe don't even recognize it because they have said national security concerns. One thing I want to ask you guys is that there's beyond the radical left that we talked about, the 300 individuals in Israel. There is obviously, I think, like a larger community of, I would say, maybe soft Zionism or people who are not as against the apartheid, but still are very critical of Israel, or at least, I guess the question I have is organizations like Ombim Beyachad. Am I saying that right?
Ombim Biachad.
Ombim Biachad. Would you say that this organization, which translates for those of you who don't know in America to Standing Together, is an organization inside of Israel proper with Palestinian citizens of Israel, right? It's comprised of like Israeli Jews and Palestinian citizens of Israel, and I mean, I feel as though, like, I want to understand, has the attitude changed in the Jewish Arab movement for peace in the direction of saying, no, we have to eviscerate Hamas, we have to kill everyone in Hamas, and that's why this siege in Gaza is actually justifiable? Or has it moved in the other direction where people understand that this is like an unmanageable apartheid? What would you say to at least broader organizations within Israel in the liberal front, and how they feel about it now?
So it's funny you mentioned Standing Together. They are actually like I mean, they're not broad at all. I mean, they're also seen as like the radical left. I didn't mean that they are not. Like they face Israeli society and Palestinian citizens of Israel society, but they're not seen as Zionists. They do not consider themselves a Zionist organization. They don't consider themselves anti-Zionist either. But they are a good example of an organization that, after the October 7th attack, has not stopped, and they keep calling for peace. They keep calling for a just solution. They keep calling for justice for Palestinians and an end to the occupation. If we look at organizations more towards the Zionist left, such as the Labor Party, they have full on support the war. They pray for the IDF. They don't even say occupation. Most of the way that they talk to Israeli society is by saying that the Palestinian problem is a problem for us, and that's why we need to separate from them. We can't live with them.
My favorite is Isaac Herzog, of course. I mean, he's a bold and brilliant leader.
Yes.
I mean, for people, I'm just mentioning him so that people understand. Like, I mean, he's the president, which is a symbolic role in general. You might recognize him as the guy who will bring up a copy of like the Al Qaeda manual every now and then, or a annotated version of Mein Kampf to say that we have to keep killing children. He is a Labor Party representative, but I mean, I guess the Labor Party is like completely eviscerated anyway, right?
Yeah, it totally crashed. I mean, the whole Zionist left has crashed since the Oslo Accords. The Labor Party used to have like a chance to be prime minister, and now they're sitting like they're under the percentage that they can get in the parliament. And the only kind of hope for the Zionist left is this politician by the name of Yair Golan. And the way he gained popularity in the past few weeks is by being a soldier and by rescuing. I mean, he in October 7th he rescued a lot of people, and now he is fully in support of the war, and that's the way that he gained popularity in the past few weeks.
Yeah, but even then, this is like this is the representative of the Israeli left to the broader majority of the Israeli population, is what you're saying, right? Like this is like he is their only glimmer of hope for the quote unquote Israeli left, or at least like the Labor Party, like the Zionist leftist approach.
Yeah, he's from the Meretz Party, which is a little more left wing than the Labor Party. They do say occupation sometimes, but they consider themselves Zionists as well.
Yeah, and historically, like Meretz is also not like a like it's a very easy party to say that you support, but like their members in Knesset do not have a particularly great track record. At least in my like they're not having interviewed a few of them myself. But the thing I'm like the somebody like Yair Golan, for example, or another figure who I know has become pretty prominent, Amir Tibon, the Haaretz correspondent, whose like dad also did like a rescue mission essentially. I was, does it feel like there are new, these are firmly like Zionist center left kind of figures. Do you feel like there is space, that you're talking, not like, not like hundreds of thousands of people mobilizing, but like, have you had like, do you think that there are people who you see are engaging with this differently, who actually, looked at what, the wound of October 7th and thought, maybe we've got to try something different here. Perhaps this like endless siege in Gaza was not the way to make them or us secure.
Absolutely. Like, depends. Like, I think, as Tal said earlier, like, one thing that is almost universal, except for maybe very dumb people and people who profit from the situation, is that how things are done right now cannot continue. They have to change. Many people, I think most people, think they need to change to further strengthen the current systems in place, to completely wipe out Gaza, or to occupy it and to settle it, and so on. And I think many people like us, and even people who didn't agree with us before, a select few, but do agree with us now, think that it has to change, but to another direction, that the current situation just can't go on, and we have to make lasting peace, which would stop the cycle of blood rather than take even more of part in the cycle of blood.
To what extent can sorry, please.
No, you can go ahead.
The quick question I had, related to that was about, what about the ability of, like historically the Israeli left and like Palestinian society and Israel have not really been able to work as hand in hand as they would, like their organizations that work together, or like Adala, that are like fusions, you could say, of both, but like they're not like hand in glove by any means. I'm curious, like as sort of younger people engaged in the activism, how you guys think about that, and how, whether or not there's more capacity for it to change and for people to, like just because it was something that when I was, when I spent time there when I was younger, it like always struck me how bifurcated the worlds were, not for any bad reason, just like that was the world that they had inherited, and it's a tough thing to break.
I think like in the general Israeli society, it's absolutely very present, and also the Zionist left, like the general sentiment that there is no partner, simply because there is no familiarity with the Palestinian like population and politics. Like for example, there's like a very common sentiment among the Israeli populace that they like film the signs in the West Bank in the entrance to the A territories where this place is dangerous for Israeli civilians. You shall not pass under any circumstance. Which like, bro, like you just need a Palestinian pal with you. It's like it's a legal technicality. It's not dangerous for you. Like maybe you'll get looked at weirdly, and depends on the place, but Eh.
As far as I understand, the danger, at least from some formerly like ultra nationalist, ultra Zionist settlers, even from the West Bank, like and their firsthand accounts, the danger comes from being recognized as a part of the Palestinian population because the at the checkpoints, once you cross over to the Palestinian side, if you don't have, because you're maybe afraid that if you wear your kippah, people will think you're Jewish and harm you. If you hide that you are Jewish without your identification papers, they are not going to know that you are Jewish, and therefore all of a sudden there's an attitude shift where the real danger or the real fear does not come from Palestinians there, but instead of how you might be perceived by the Israeli occupying force in that moment. That's what I've at least heard from a perspective shift
Yeah,
from
sorry,
some formerly Zionists.
Points close my train of thought. I apologize. And like in practice, like there is partnership to be made. Like that's not the reality. Like sure, maybe the Zionist left has a big problem with collaborating with Palestinian people because they simply aren't talking to Palestinian people. Like the minute you identify yourself with the system that oppresses them, maybe they wouldn't really want to be your partners. But Israeli Jews who actively oppose the occupation, suddenly we see new possibilities, and suddenly Palestinians do want to work with us. Like, for example, the Hadash Jabha party. Like, it's majority Palestinian. It's the one Ofer Kassif is in. It's majority Palestinian and also has many Jewish members. I am a part of the Young Communist League in the country, Banki or Shabib Shouaya. Like, and like it's also majority Palestinian, but has many Israeli Jewish participants. Like there is partnerships to be made. They just aren't as available when you're still in the mindset and in the like box of
Yeah,
Zionism.
I think that's a really good point because it is mindset. Like it's not there aren't material barriers that, and to your point about those signs in territory A, like like they're not real. It's just a sign. A Palestinian isn't gonna like kidnap and rob you just because you're in the like there's and it is a degree to which it's like like as you're saying, like a lot of like all that inhibits people from engaging with Palestinians really is just a matter of not seeing them like the other all the time.
There are also real material barriers. Like for example, examples of I guess successful Jewish Palestinian partnership is the struggles in Masafer Yatta or Sheikh Jarrah, where Jewish Israeli activists came and in collaboration and real partnership with the Palestinian activists and residents of the place managed to really make change.
Yeah, these places were under threat of ethnic
Still
cleansing.
is.
Still are under threat of ethnic cleansing, and through protective presence in the area of international and Jewish Israeli activists, it has helped delay as much as the system is like. The system doesn't really care, but it has helped delay in some manner the ethnic cleansing.
But there are also, as I said, like real material barriers. Like for example, Masafer Yatta, like I was there many times, and in the Jordan Valley and the more generally the West Bank, I was there many times before the 7th of October attack. But since then, as the settlers became more heavily armed and more violent and had more of a military backup, like I don't go there out of my own volition, or I guess out of my mother's volition, because it's unsafe. Like
But
of
you're
course
saying that you're saying
much less unsafe for me, but also for me, like going there right now is unsafe. Like friends of mine were shot at in Masafer Yatta.
And also, the day after, a couple days after October 7th, a couple of our friends were doing protective presence in the Jordan Valley in a place named Wadi Sikh. And the settlers came there and took two Palestinians and pointed their guns at them. And also they basically kidnapped the Israeli Jewish activists as well as Palestinian activists in the area. And they got beat up and their phones taken away. And after that, they got released home. And apparently, they said that the settlers that came and arrested them were part of the military. They're part of a division that knows the area. Just means settlers that live there.
Yeah. There's a lot more mobilization of settlers and obviously a deliberate arming effort by Ben Gvir. American small arms have reached the hands of settlers consistently, and that has obviously escalated since October 7th. So I guess one question I have is, I mean, the real issue here is like, how do you radicalize the Israeli youth? How do you radicalize the Israeli left into becoming a genuine large movement that can maybe even suck up certain parts of the liberal aspects? Like, how do you make an argument towards liberals who have these national security concerns? Because I feel like at the end of the day, the maintenance of this occupation, this apartheid, is always justified with the national security concerns that are deeply embedded within Israeli society. And as you also pointed out, I think segregation is plays a major role in stopping any kind of integration from occurring and stopping many Israelis from seeing Palestinians as full-blown human beings that deserve dignity and human rights. So how do you break through that beyond placing Israeli Jewish bodies in between settlers? Because I feel like on the subject of settlers, this is a contentious argument even amongst liberal Zionists, right? Like, some people correctly recognize that the settlers actually make Israel look bad. Like, there is obviously mistreatment of the Palestinian citizens of Israel, which is embedded in the law as well. However, like, that would be fine, and some level of the some maintenance of the occupation would be fine. But then the settlers and their actions make the rest of the world look at Israel in a different way. Is kind of what I see from at least a lot of the liberal Zionists in Israel who think like it's bad PR. How do you get those guys to, I guess, develop a more moral stance, and how do you integrate, or how do you grow your movement so that there are more kind-hearted, more moral Israelis that see Palestinians as human beings instead of the constant dehumanization that they are subjected to?
I think we saw of course, this struggle is ongoing, but I think we saw very big strides of improvement during the anti-judicial overhaul protests. Also, like, for me at least, like, it's not a matter of making the Israeli population more moral or more kind-hearted. Like, I really don't give a shit. Like, it would be nice for me. I would have more people to make friends with. But like, it's a matter of like practicality and like political power and like action. And I think if the way to end the occupation is to convince, truthfully convince the Israeli population that the occupation is hurting its own security, I think that's a valid struggle. And I think, as I said, we really did see a massive improvement during the anti-judicial overhaul protest. Like, refusal was suddenly a massively discoursed topic. Like, we had a public letter proclaiming our refusal to serve that had over 280 teenagers before enlistment sign it. And we like occupied the school in Tel Aviv and had like a massive event like showing the letter, and like hundreds of people came and it was covered all over the news, and it really like became like a big topic. And the anti-occupation bloc in the anti-judicial overhaul protests grew every weekend. Every Saturday when we protested, there were more and more people. We started at around like 200 participants in that occupation block, and then at the most we were like 3,000-4,000. Like
I don't know if it's 3,000-4,000.
it was 3,000
Okay.
for a few weeks there.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. Also, the idea of the like PR whatever, the bad PR is an idea that we're seeing a lot. It's called, there's a term called pigua asparati, which means hasbara attack, which, yeah, it basically frames like, oh, don't post the Israeli military humiliating civilians in Gaza because it's bad for PR.
Yeah.
I do think that maybe we shouldn't be calling it Hasbara attack and instead be calling it not very moral. um, it's not that hard to switch the words and to actually recognize what it is and not just tell people to keep it on the side and not talk about it while keeping it up.
Yeah, well, one aspect of that actually is something that Jeremy Scahill wrote about on the Intercept recently. There is, as far as I understand, an IDF PSYOPs division that also maintains a Telegram channel, quite similar to the very famous Telegram channel that I'm sure you guys are familiar with. The one that has 100,000 followers at this moment, where they celebrate a lot of the Israeli occupied forces operations in Gaza, the humiliation of Palestinians and blown out mosques and schools and whatnot. It's a very popular Telegram channel as far as I understand, but then the IDF's very own has 6,000 followers, not as popular, but still something to, I guess, pay attention to. This kind of thing obviously makes the Israeli occupation look bad, because it is bad. It's an apartheid. What is the what is the reception from the Israeli left to things such as this? Like, when you see things like that, does that have a radicalization component to others who see it and think, okay, maybe that's a little bit too far? How do you feel about that? Or by the way, I don't know if you are familiar with what I was talking about at all. I just kind of dropped it in there, but
Yeah, I don't know if it's the same thing, but a couple days ago or yesterday, there was a Haaretz coverage that actually one of the
Yes, that was it.
yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
The Gore Telegram channel.
Yeah.
right. So before, I don't know if you mentioned it, but people didn't know that it was an IDF run thing. And the name of it is 72 Virgins, which,
Yeah.
if you're familiar with, yeah.
I think is familiar.
Yeah. No, I'm talking to everyone, but yeah, people didn't know that this channel was run by the IDF, and I think people kind of, a lot of people can't live with, like, they can't be okay with the IDF posting this gore and celebrating it. But while critiquing the IDF's PR actions, I think a lot of people still are for the war, but in a little bit of a different way, where maybe don't be so proud about it, but keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, and also generally, like, it's more of a disgust than condemnation. Like, people don't like when an IDF soldier beats up or strips naked like a Palestinian man, but they don't really care when, like, the IDF does it through buttons on a computer, because then it's less in their face. Like, it can be, you can estrange yourself from the situation. It's more alienated.
Do you think that explains why the IDF, and because this is a qualitative difference from how they've done war in Gaza and the West Bank before, like why the IDF is doing so much bombing? Because you can't just push a button.
I think, yeah, like, there's a reason, like, why like, soldiers are better off when they don't see all the harm they're doing. Like, there's a reason, like, Hamas militants, when they kill people with their hands, had to use drugs, while IDF soldiers, when they kill people not with their bare hands, don't necessarily have to use drugs and live their life very commonly with free conscience. Though also a lot of the like IDF, the people like who finished their service now live with PTSD and guilty conscience and so on. But like, it's absolutely like you alienate yourself from the situation. You push a button, you don't stab someone and see them bleed.
Yeah, there's something to be said about breaking the silence. For example, the anti-occupation group comprised of former IDF veterans that many of which joined the organization. As far as I understand, after their experiences in sieges inside of Gaza. So being on the ground inside of Gaza genuinely changes, it seems, people's perspective on the matter in ways that contribute to negatively polarizing them against the occupation once they have a personal involvement with it. You're right. I mean, if it's a machine of destruction, if you're if you're in a helicopter, if you're on a plane, it's very different. If you're operating a drone, it's very different than just like directly going into a house and shooting people, or driving a tank through these cities that have now been destroyed. I guess. Is there any final note that you guys would want to leave this on as far as things that you've covered so far? Things that we've talked about so far before I let you guys go?
We could about the
No.
Okay.
I think you should donate to Messervot if you can.
Yes.
Because it would help us.
Also, another point is that I think, I mean, as you said, there are a lot of Israelis in the chat. If you can't donate or if you don't want to, I urge you that if you are a young person, contact us, join the Messervot network. If you're watching from another place, there are ways that you can help either this struggle or a different struggle. So join anything you can and make the world a better place.
And follow us on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok and all the apps.
What is the here? I'll put those links as well. What is it? The what's the Instagram account for Messervot? Or I mean, I'm saying it wrong, but
MESARVOT. And I think on Twitter it's the same but with the one afterwards.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah. On
No,
Instagram,
it is an underscore.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Messervot with MESARVOT underscore.
Messervot.
Messervot.
Messervot. Here you
Yeah.
go. I'll link it
Right
in
now I'm preparing a post for the fundraiser that will be up by tomorrow, hopefully. So
Yeah.
so if you're not see it tomorrow and then don't.
Okay.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
This was a really, really special and edifying conversation.
Yeah, thank you for your bravery as well. I mean, you guys are doing an awesome thing. I think hopefully people recognize that here in America. I mean, you're taking a courageous stance, especially at such a young age.
We appreciate you guys having us on.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Noah.
My pleasure.
Connecting
Take
us.
care.
Bye, everyone.